most dominant player to ever step on any athletic field.
He's one. He's 182. I fall 3.
He's the godfather of the running back position. You look to get respect from Jim Brown.
Jim Brown is one of those players that I think could dominate in any era. He weighed 230 pounds. His O-line averaged 238 pounds. Yet despite being massive for the time, as Bill Belichick said, he moved as if he was 185 pounds. And he was kinda crazy. Get this. He did not drink water during games as he believed it would make him feel satisfied and thus reduce his drive. It seems to have worked because he led the league in rushing 8 of his 9 years in the league. A 3-time MVP, that's 33% of all of his career, and he's the only runner ever to average over 100 yards per game. His 104.3 yards is almost 5 yards more than number 2. Brown had it all. I mean, the guy is in the National Lacrosse Hall of Fame. Usually a running back that's dominant in one aspect, say speed, lacks in another, say power. Not Brown though. He had a blend of athleticism, elusiveness, speed, and power that was enough to gain the respect of even the most feared Dick Butkus. He could catch, he could return kickoffs, and even threw 3 touchdowns. In his book, he wrote, "The key in the NFL is to hit a man so hard, so often, he doesn't want to play anymore." That's something a linebacker would say, not a running back. Brown set an NCAA record that held for 34 years for most points scored in a game. In one of his final games, he scored 6 touchdowns and kicked 7 extra points when Syracuse pounded Colgate 61-7. Paul Brown, coach of the Cleveland Browns, drafted Jim Brown. He entered the league without missing a step. In just his 9th game, he set a then single-game rushing record for 237 yards in a 45-31 victory over the LA Rams. And that season was just pure class. Rookie of the Year, All-Pro, league rushing title, and MVP. The only rookie ever to win the MVP award. Yet it was not just the physical dominance that made him so great. Jim Brown was incredibly smart, a student of the game. He studied film, told blockers how to align, he understood how to beat defenders and how to get leverage on them. And this understanding of the game would cause problems between him and Paul Brown. Eventually, he came to see the offense as predictable and too conservative. Paul Brown was the face of the franchise. It was his team and it was his way. Jim Brown also had a strong personality, and there would be this underlying tension between the two of them at all times. They managed to make it work, but eventually it would be enough. Art Modell fired Paul Brown with the support of Jim Brown in 1963. He'd go on to finish that season with a career-high 1,863 rushing yards, which was more yards than 11 of the other 13 teams amassed. In 1964, the Browns would win their first championship in almost 10 years, and Brown rushed for 114 yards and caught 3 passes for 37 yards in Cleveland's 27-0 win over the Baltimore Colts. Brown was running at a time where the run game was the focal point of any offense. Despite every defender focusing on him, he still couldn't be stopped. He averaged 5.2 yards per carry, so it made sense. Just feed Brown. He's going to get you the first down in a couple plays on average. What makes the stats even more impressive is that he never played a 16-game season. He played 12 and 14-game seasons, but still goes toe-to-toe with any other back. And Jim Brown completely transcended everybody else during his era. It can often be hard to say who's the greatest ever, because the eras can differ so much. But what is crystal clear is that Brown was in a class of his own amongst his peers. He surpassed 1,200 rushing yards in 7 of his 9 years. 3 came in a 12-game season. He led the league in rushing 8 of his 9 years. No running back has led more than 4 seasons. He also led the league in scrimmage yards 6 times and total touchdowns 5 times. Prior to his arrival in the league, from 1932 to 1956, the leading rusher only surpassed 1,000 yards 6 times. Brown did that 7 times in 9 years. He only fell short in his rookie year with 942 yards and 1962 with 996 when he was dealing with injuries. He ran for at least 100 yards in 49% of all his games, and he'd retire number 1 in single season and career rushing yards, rushing touchdowns, and all-purpose yards. He played running back, one of the most unforgiving positions, and never missed a game. When he retired in his final season, he almost had 800 more rushing yards than the next back, 21 touchdowns, a career high, and his 3rd MVP. The man went out at his peak. Thanks to the everlasting genius of Art Modell, Brown retired abruptly. He was filming for a movie and would be late to training camp. Modell threatened to fine Brown $100 a day that he missed. Brown was already flirting with the idea of retiring, and after the threat, he made his decision.